hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to another episode of the Indigo Womb Wisdom Podcast. I'm your host and sister friend, Shatia Tee, Owsley, and thank you for watching and or listening. So sit back, grab some tea and a notebook, and let's vibe together as we have organic and practical conversations embracing intuitive womb wisdom, spirituality, and a sprinkle of magic to rebel, restore, and radiate overall wellness in our lives. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Indigo Womb Wisdom Podcast. I am your host and your sister friend, Shatia Tee Owsley, and I would just like to welcome everyone to the conversation today. Today, we are joined by a North Carolina-based healer who offers intuitive restoration sessions, combining Reiki with intuitive guidance to create personalized experiences that honor what the body, mind, and the spirit are calling for. Through alignment coaching, she supports individuals in reconnecting with their truth, strengthening their well-being, and taking meaningful steps towards a life that reflects what matters most, both personally and in service to the greater good. Today, I would like to introduce our amazing guest, Miss Danielle Marie Sherman. Hello, beautiful.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Danielle is deeply committed to helping people live liberated, aligned lives. She is a multifaceted healer, a strategist, and a coach who supports individuals and organizations in aligning their actions and decisions with their mission, their vision, and in her organizational work, Danielle builds the capacity and leadership skills of leaders and staff within the state and local government, agencies, philanthropic organizations, nonprofit, and community-based initiatives. Drawing from a rich tapestry of lived experiences, haven't we all? Professional training, intuitive insight, Danielle weaves together intuition and strategy to support authentic, sustainable transformation. Her work focuses on advancing equity through skill building workshops, leadership development coaching, organizational assessment, strategic planning, implementation, and most importantly, cultural transformation. You are doing the dang on thing, and I am here for
Thank
it.
you. I'm so proud of myself too.
Hello, girl. Okay. So I want you to take us back to a season when you first realized that something in your life was out of alignment. Tell us what the signs were. How was it showing up in your body, the emotions, or if you want to give and dive a little bit deeper into some of the circumstances that you initially ignored in the beginning, or maybe you just misunderstood.
I just love those questions. So I would take us back to 7 years ago. 7 years ago, I was on a plane. I was coming back from a work trip in a job that really wasn't fulfilling me at all. I was doing policy work where we were really thinking about active transportation and where sidewalks were, and do people have access to walk and be physically active and get to the places that they wanted to be. And that speaks to me because I am very much into wellness, but that type of work didn't really fulfill me. And I remember being on the plane and having these questions that had been sitting on my phone for a while. And I was like, let me just do these journal prompts. So I was writing. I don't remember exactly what the questions were, but all I know is that what came from the reflection was like, wow, God, I am so disconnected from my body. When I think about being intimate with my husband, I feel disconnected, right? I don't feel connected to my body in it, right? And this has always really been the case when I think about it. And I remember God saying, womb. And I just felt like, yeah, I'm just so disconnected from my womb. But also I thought that womb was really just around carrying life. And I didn't know that your womb is actually the seat, or the sacral chakra is the seat of all your desires, creativity, right? And all the things that you want, but also the place where unwanted emotions can really sit and fester. And I think growing up, I grew up as Christian, and you're not really taught, like, and also my family, you're not really taught a lot about sensuality, sexuality, and, all of that. And that, I think, was a huge thing for me because I always just felt disconnected. I always felt it was a problem with my body, um, and when I wanted to decide to offer myself to someone. And so it was just really huge that I had that reflection time when I was on that plane. When I got off, I said I was going to go ahead and look into womb healing. And I went and looked, and I only saw a little bit about it. One person was really on it for me. And so I bought her ebook and did my own 7-day reflection. And it really brought up a lot of things that I thought I had moved on from. And I was like, wow. So it felt like it was so healing. I feel like it made way for the next chapter, which was I got pregnant probably 3 to 4 months later, and, then I had my son, and that was wonderful, and then the job I was just talking about, I actually got fired from, and so I was on maternity leave, so that was also just like, "Oh my gosh," and I started to get to a place where I was like, they tell you to go to school, they tell you to get married, they tell you to do all this stuff, and I'm here, right? Nursing my child while trying to change my resume, apply for a job. And I was at this point, I said, it doesn't matter where I work. All I want to do is be happy. Because I felt like at that moment, I wasn't really truly happy. Like I had moments of happiness, but it wasn't sustained. I guess the joy really wasn't there. So I was trying to figure out what does that look like. So I said, I'm going to leave behind all those norms that they tell me, and I'm going to start to figure out what I want for myself. And that's what I did. So I was able to find a job, which was really helpful. It was in adolescent sexual health, and it was powerful because it was connected to the body. Like all the stuff, like God just always knows. So it helped me to start like diving into like be talking about pleasure more and talking about agency over your body and connecting. It was everything that I needed. It also gave me allowed me to step into a more leadership role, which was helpful. But during that time, I remember just growing a lot. Like I started to realize, well, first of all, I had my son, and immediately I lost weight pretty quickly. But then all of a sudden, like over a period of 4 months, I probably gained like almost 40 pounds. It like came out of nowhere. And I wasn't eating any different. I was eating healthy. I have a gluten and dairy allergy, so I have to always be mindful anyway. So I was just really not understanding. So I started to do more work into like figuring out physically how to lose weight, take care of my internal self. But that was a journey for almost 4 years. I kept that weight on for 4 years despite like how I was eating and moving my body. So that was also a challenge mentally as well. So I was starting to think you talked about alignment, and I'm talking about it in this way very retrospective, but when I was in it, I was just doing the next best thing I knew to do. So I feel like the physical you're always going to go to because it's about how you feel in your body, what it looks like. That was first. So that's where I went. And then I started to notice emotionally, I felt like I was crashing out a lot, with my partner. And I'm like, this doesn't feel really good. I have had a lot of emotional intelligence in terms of like how I showed up and vulnerable, but I didn't manage my emotions well. I let them really control me more so. So there was that. And then mentally, like I said, there were a lot of beliefs that were tied to how people tell you to live life that I was sitting with. And then spiritually, I've always believed in God, but I felt like, again, disconnected, and then I needed to develop more practices that drew me closer. So between like 2020 and 2023, I essentially really focus on like the personal aspects, which I consider the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual. And so emotionally, I really started to think about, how can I regulate my nervous system, right? When I'm triggered, how can I learn about my emotions? How can I be truthful and very honest with myself and being able to like understand my emotions and be able to express them in a way that people can understand. And that took me a long time because I was just very dysregulated. I think all my life I experienced anxiety, very low grade, and then a lot. after having denim, postpartum anxiety hit, right? So it was just like, oh my gosh, it's always this edge on me. And so I just did my best to like regulate my nervous system, move my body. And then mentally, I was like, okay, I'm done thinking about what other people want from me and like, what do I want? So I started to do these affirmations. I took post-it notes and that I have about probably 20. I did this in like 2021. And I put all the ones that I like believed in already and the ones that I really didn't even believe about myself. And I was like, but I will believe. And I put them in my vanity, like up by my vanity. And they're still there to this day. And now I actually believe every single one of them because they always catch my eye every single day. And I was able to work towards all of that stuff. But I had to really reprogram myself from like what people say I should be like or who I should be to who I know I can be and who I am because that's who God said I am. So the belief system was really important. And not just the I am, but also like what do I believe? So if I'm walking down the street and I feel a certain kind of way, why do I feel that kind of way? Like if I see somebody, is that a true like is that a conditioning that I have? So I'm questioning every thought I have, every action I have, because I really am trying to get back to my authentic self, which also loops us right back around to the womb, right? That is where when you are connected to your womb and it's yours to cultivate, you feel very much yourself. You feel authentic. But when you're disconnected and you have other people's stuff in that space, right? You don't feel like yourself. So I was like, I really want to make sure I'm getting back to myself. So I examined all my beliefs. I still do it to this day. If something comes up and I'm like, do I really believe that? Or is that something someone told me? Is that what media tells me? And then I try to switch it with something the opposite, like, oh, it actually could be this. Or maybe I should look into this to see if this is actually what I believe more about. And then around the spiritual practices, I started to just like meditate a lot more, whether it was like sitting down or walking. I did a lot more journaling, very like open, honest journaling. I also wrote letters. One of my mentors told me about like writing letters to people who, were just like, I have things, I need to get out. And then, right? And then rip them up or burn them. And I could tell you a quick story. One time I actually did this and, gosh, I was not thinking and burned it and it was coming down to my fingers. I was outside and I dropped it. It drops into it drops into the grass. The grass gets on fire.
That was a serious letter right there. You had a lot to say.
It had so much to say. And I remember I had to run inside and my parents came out and helped me. Once we got the fire out, I remember being like, oh my gosh, I feel like such a weight off. Like it really was like a energetic weight had been removed.
Hmm.
And so I recommend that to people, but just being safer, like you might want to do it in a sink, where you have water right there, you can take it because that could have been a whole thing. And my husband came home and I could see him outside looking. He was like that.
Like,
So, but
what is she
what is she doing?
doing?
But the grass actually grew back greener
Mhm.
than it was before. So yeah, so I did practices like that, journaled, like I said, venting, talking to people, but I really had to focus on myself. I think most of my life I lived with what other people thought and what external factors were at play. Like, oh, you have to do this, you have to get married, you have to have this job, you have to have this home and then it was like, okay, but what is the fruit of the spirit, right? And the Bible talks about the fruit of the spirit being like peace and love and joy and gentleness and kindness and self-control. And I didn't really feel those things all the time. And I wanted to. And I now can say, even in the midst of going through some really hard times of the last 2 years, I can still say I have that. I feel that I have the fruit of the spirit because of the work that I did in those areas. So I think that really kind of ties. So I think some of the signs to me are if you don't experience those fruits, right? You can experience, there are other types of fruits, I would say, like the ones that come from like your success, but the fruit of the spirit that comes from like your internal like satisfaction and fulfillment. If you don't experience that, that's a time to check in and really think about where you might be disconnected. And when I say disconnected even from the womb space, that's also disconnected from like your creator, however you define your creator, um, that's disconnected. Really nothing. I mean, you can still create and you'll still be able to live and have moments of happiness. But I think when you're talking about like in the depths of your spirit, happy and fulfilled, that really comes when you are connected with yourself and connected with God. And that you've taken the time to remove the clutter out of the way, whether you've put that clutter there or other people have put that clutter there, and start defining, this is what I want for my life, because you get to have that. You are worthy just because you are a child of God. And so that's really what were the signs for me along the way.
Yeah. I think you touched on so many areas where people can truly relate. I know as I was listening to you tell your story, so many pieces resonated with me.
Mm,
And I think it resonate with a lot of women and specifically Black women and the weight that we carry to succeed, to achieve, but also to be strong and be the container for everyone's emotions and to be the go-to. And,
wow.
we have a lot of different responsibilities and we carry a lot of roles. And yes, we are doing it, but we are tired,
Yes,
right?
yes,
We are
yes.
extremely tired of doing all the things. And, I think, like you said, many of us we weren't taught certain things. We observed, we saw, we ingested, we took in from the women around us who were strong, who were
Right.
resilient, who kept things moving and going and they made things happen. But many of us did not see a softer side. We didn't see rest, right?
My God.
that was a luxury. You
Mhm.
have to keep pushing. People depend on you. People are relying on you. You have to show up and you don't get any time to just be. And
Yes,
so I think we ended up embodying those characteristics, those qualities that yes, they allow us to achieve so much, but many times they leave us mentally, physically, spiritually, psychologically, emotionally exhausted.
yes.
So, learning that not only did you have an awakening on that airplane, you then went through another rebirth after having your son. I think a lot of times, like, oh, we feel broken, we feel broke down, we feel, in some ways.
Mhm.
But maybe if we can reframe that to say maybe we were cracked open,
Ooh,
right, in a
take it there, girl.
way
Take it there.
that allows us to shed
Yes.
all of the stuff that we have been carrying in an effort to allow us to rediscover who we were always destined to be, who we are at our core, who we are before people told us who we were supposed to
Ooh,
be, right? Before we got all the roles that, many of us enjoy and we love and we take pride in them. But on the flip side of that, being all of those things sometimes overshadows who spirit wants us to be and who
yes,
spirit has always desired for us to be. And
yes,
so, in order for us to see what our foundation is and who we were and where we're going and what it's supposed to look like for us, it does sometimes, for us, many times, calls for I'm going to sit your tail down really quick and
yes.
I'm going to show
Yep, exactly it.
where you are off track, right? You're not lost, you're not broken, but we just need to align, as you
Yes,
mentioned, right?
that's
We
right,
just need to be guided back on track. And
that's
so
right.
I love what you have shared because I feel that it resonates so much. I want to go back to you talking about being disconnected from your body. I think that is something that many of us experience, at least in my circle of people that I'm
Mhm.
around and the work that I do as well. I speak to a lot of women who are very disconnected from their bodies.
That's right.
So, how did your physical body communicate misalignment to
Mm,
you?
yeah.
And how can some of the listeners begin to recognize some of those similar signals that you may have experienced before they get to burnout or before they get to illness?
Yeah. Oof. Well, okay. I would probably go back to like 2024 because, yeah. So around 2024, I was having excruciating pain during my cycles, and especially on my left side in particular. And my cycles are really, really heavy. And I remember going to my doctor and letting her know, and she was like, "Let's do a procedure to see what's going on." And they found that there were polyps in my vaginal area. And so they were like, "Okay, let's do a procedure to remove it." So I remember actually the day before I went to get the polyps removed, I remember, going on my front porch and just meditating and praying to God. And I'm like, I feel like this is like another part of my awakening and the journey of alignment, because this has been living in my body and taking up space in a space that is mine to have, right? For, like I said, creativity, pleasure, all the desires that I have. So I really was like, God, as this removes, as you take this out, fill it with all the manifestations that I desire. And you're not going to believe it. After that prayer, I got up and walked. 20 minutes in, one of my girlfriends called me. And she's actually the same girlfriend who, before I gave birth to Denim, she was like, "You're about to, like, when you go through pregnancy, you're about to change the world." And so she called me 20 minutes after that prayer. And she's like, she had a dream that God was like, "Danielle, it's time for you to go deeper with me." And I'm like, that's exactly what my prayer was like, I'm ready to go deeper, right? And so I was like blown away. She said some other things that were like, oh my gosh, only God would know. So to tell you.
Mhm.
And so I had the procedure done. Uh, so I think that's a way in which it can show in different ways, like polyps and like fibroids and like different things like that. Did I have signs before? Probably, but I don't think I really recognized them in my sacral, in my womb space, really. But I did start noticing the difference, because I had very regular cycles, and I had, they were not long, they were just typical, no more than 7 days, but they were going 8 to 10 days, and like I said, the pain was really intense. So then that's when I was like, "Something is going on." That was really when that whole year of 2024 was also a deep awakening for me. It was when God was like, "Okay, it's time to go deeper. It's time to rely extremely on me for all your needs." And so I think also when you were talking earlier about meeting people's needs and like you're in a relationship with people, you can't even get to that point until you at least start working on yourself and the personal aspects. Like I talked about, the physical, the mental, the spiritual, the emotional. You can't even think about like, what do you need from someone else, from your friends, from your partners, from the types of work that you do or the environments that you're in. So that was really profound for me. So once I was able to build that capacity up some more in terms of like my personal, I was able to start thinking about, what do I need in these other areas of my life? And God could really help me unfold those things. So I think it was just really helpful for me, like as I said, working on my personal self. And I feel like the polyps were like a signature of like, now it's time. Like we're taking that out. And now you can start to think about, what do you need in relationship to people, in terms of your job, in terms of like the environments that you're in, because it's not just about yourself, right? You want to take care of self, but you are also surrounded by environments, social environments, physical environments, and the relationships that really can help elevate you as well, and you as well into them. Because like the womb space, as I said, is like the seat of like all your desires and creativity and what you want. And I feel like before I was, working and doing a lot of work in areas that I don't think I was really called to do. It was all, it led me right to here, and I pull on those things, but it really wasn't the work that I was called to do. So as I was able to literally physically remove those things, work on myself, I was able to then say, okay, excuse me, then I was able to say, okay, now this is what I want for like my outward. I'm ready to be seen and to show myself to the world. So hopefully I answered what you were asking me. No.
So I want to just dive a little bit deeper into the spiritual
Mhm.
alignment. And so, how do you differentiate between living in true alignment versus operating in survival mode?
Yeah, that's a really great thing. I think, first of all, when I talked about earlier on, I've always had a connection to God, but how do I say this? I think oftentimes we think about God in terms of like, or spirit, however people define God, right? Or creative. But we think about it in terms of like, like when I need something in the ask. But what I realized was that just like I have a relationship with my husband and my friends and my parents, that there's a desire that God has to be in more of like a relationship with me. So like just around, like we're hanging out, like God is right there with me. Like as I'm walking, I get to see God's work all around me and observing it. And like being very open and honest with how I feel. I don't lie to myself. I might tell some white lies outside to other people, but to myself and to God, I'm going to be truthful because that's
Mm,
the only way that I know that is to be. Like why not? Like this is my space for me and God. So I think that just being truthful with yourself, and it really comes with being able to like really hear God in the ways that you hear. So I hear God, I see a lot more like visions, I'm starting to smell a lot too, but it's just like having to I have to slow down in order to hear God. And so that's actually opposite of what the world teaches you, and I think that's by design. So my recommendation to people is that it's it can take a lot to be able to slow down, to be able to hear God speaking, to hear your higher self speaking, but that's really where you're able to know what is true because everything else is coming from external and I you don't know if that is true or not, right? You don't know if that is right, but you know what is right when you get it in your spirit and you know like that's what it is. For example, like when I told you I was gained the weight from 2020, didn't lose the weight till 2024. And I had been going to doctors, asking all these questions, doing all these tests, and they were helpful in many ways. But I just could not lose the weight. And so then I remember one time I was walking and I was like, God, I'm like, this is like really frustrating to me. And I knew inflammation is an issue. Like if you could figure out what is inflaming your body, you will drop the weight. But I could not figure it out. And I'm like, I already get gluten and dairy and all these things. Like, what else? And God was like, it was something around like fat. Like you're having like issues digesting fat. And I'm like, okay, I'll look more into that. And so then I started to look into like what is fat. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. Cause I'm not out here like eating what I would think is like a whole bunch of like fat and like processed food. But like even olive oil has tons of fat. Like it's like 15 grams of fat in a teaspoon or a tablespoon of it. And that was just too much for my body. And I used to have salads and like would use it as a salad dressing. It was always too much. And then, meat has a lot of fat in it for for the amount that I can have. So once I heard that from God, I started taking out the meat. I reduced the amount of fat that I had. And within a month and a half, I lost 20 pounds. And it was just like, what in the world? And like again, that came from the spirit, came from God. Didn't come from me going to the doctors that I was going to. Now God creates doctors. So I'm very wholeheartedly going to believe in going to the doctor, but some things will only come from you getting quiet, being quiet. And sometimes it is like you can be talking and also God will interrupt you and you can get messages that way. But just communing with God, right? It's not only about asking for things, but also being very grateful for all that is. It also took me, before I lost the weight, 6 months before, I got to a place where I was like, I might not lose any weight. So I accept myself. That was also another mental thing that I had to transform. And I think that acceptance of myself was a huge thing. So, yeah, all of that is like really slowing down your body, being able to hear God, and it goes opposite of what the world tells you. So you have to figure out how to carve out space in your day, even if it's 5 minutes, and it does not have to be still. Like, I don't want people to think they often tell you like meditation, you have to be still. You don't. You can be walking. But sometimes it is like maybe not turning on music and just walking outside in the quiet. It could be music. Music has helped me a lot, whether it is like Jill Scott or a gospel or just frequencies, like, the different, it could be like the hertz, frequencies. But you just have to figure out what works best for you. God speaks in every way. God knows who you are. So there's no need to like make it fit in a way that's not authentic to you. Again, this is about connection to self. So you get to explore who you are, what works best for you. And you get to do that in like this almost like a bubble with God. And for people who are not, don't have such a have the relationship with God that they want or even that they think that they desire, I would even just say, like, you sitting with yourself, right? God is in you. You are God. It's like, it's one and the same. So you are divine in who you are. So if you don't even make time to sit with yourself, then all you are is like essentially regurgitating what you're being told,
Mhm.
And so the act of alignment really is a lot around listening, listening to who you are, your highest self, what your desires are, and questioning what doesn't serve you in order to see like what do you want, and then taking those steps to get to where you want to be. Yeah, I think that's all I would say.
Yeah. I think something that is a becoming a common theme in many of the people that I talk to and what they have found on their journey of healing
Mhm.
is stillness and or the pause, just a moment to just be still,
Yes.
right? And like you said, it does not have to be long,
Hmm.
but it is still extremely impactful, especially when you are in a situation where it may be tense or it may be very heavy for you. Before you respond, you take a moment and you pause, right?
Yeah.
And you just kind of sit in it before you speak, or
Right.
check in with your breath, which is so grounding, which takes you to a different place when you realize, oh, shoot, I've been holding my breath.
Right.
Or, "Oh my goodness, let me drop my shoulders a little bit." And so it's so refreshing to hear anytime someone says, "Just be still for a moment. Just pause for a moment," because I think it's a constant reminder for all of us in a world that moves so fast. We need those moments of stillness. We need a moment to pause, to just be with ourselves. But I do understand that when you have not had the opportunity or it has not been safe or
Right.
you don't know what that looks like, taking a pause, sitting still can be terrifying.
Yeah. I was just thinking because when we think about the physical body, right? And we like, okay, we want to eat right, we want to work out. And then we think about our nervous system. So it is really big right now. I'm hearing a lot about like regulating the nervous system. People are really aware of that. But let's bring in also the energetic body to this, right? You're a healer. You're trained in Reiki as well, and you know, I guess there's not necessarily science behind it, but we don't necessarily ever have everything doesn't have to be defined by science. In terms of like the chakras, but there are these energy centers that are aligned with different parts of our body that also impact our physical bodies and our organs and how they function. So, just for those that don't know, there's like the crown chakra. That's your connection to source or God. That's where you receive divine messages. And you have your third eye. That's where you interpret all that information. And then you have your throat. Are you able to speak your truth and, speak what you need? And then you have your heart chakra. That's like life force. That's like where you hold emotional trauma as well, but also where you experience love and just fullness of life. And then you have your solar plexus, which is all things connected to your powerhouse, right? And so thinking about the issues I've had with my digestion, that really played like the energy that I experience. If I'm experiencing certain, whether the foods that I'm eating, because everything is energy, that energy from that food can impact my digestion. The physical food can, can impact that. But then also like um the presence of certain people can impact how I feel, which impacts how I feel empowered or not in myself. Then there's the sacral area that we were talking a lot about, which is like the seat of all the creativity and the pleasure. And that's also another place that holds emotional trauma. And then your root, where you feel safe. Do you feel a sense of belonging? And I don't think often we think about when we think about healing, we don't talk as much about the energy centers and how impactful they are. So people who are like even going to therapy and doing talk therapy, which is really helpful, that's very much in the mind, right? And then you're doing your physical work on your body with eating healthy and moving your body, but then energetically having to be mindful about what comes into your energetic body, right? Because if not, that throws your energy centers off balance. And if you're off balance, more susceptible also to like spiritual attacks, essentially. So it is, that to me, your energy centers are like your connection to the spirit world, but also to like your physical world that we're in. So I wanted to lift that up because sometimes when we think about like when they say the body keeps a score, that's often like it's in the body too. Like it probably can be found in like the muscles and the organs, but it really enters a lot through the energy centers. And so really being mindful of like who you have in your space, the food that you put in your body, and like how are you doing those spiritual practices and your regulation of your body to make sure that you are having balance in those energy centers and like going to see a Reiki practitioner, or the other types of energy healers, because it's not just about the physical body, it's also about the energetic body.
For sure. Definitely.
Wait,
How do you personally navigate seasons?
Mhm.
What brings you back to just integrating all of the things that you have learned?
Yeah, definitely. So I think that like all that I went through, I stepped back one day, I think early, yeah, 2025, last year, was like, okay, this is wow. I sat back and like looked at my life and was like, oh, I could start doing coaching. So that's when I started my alignment coaching. I can take all of these practices and really support other people. But for me, when I developed my curriculum, I was like, really what I did was move through the 8 dimensions of wellness. So the 8 dimensions of wellness are like physical, emotional, intellectual, or mental, however you want to define it, spiritual, financial, environmental, social, and professional or vocational. And that was it. It was essentially like, I feel like people often put their eggs in only some baskets, like, oh, I'm only going to think about my physical health, or I'm only going to think about financial, or only going to think about my career. And that's where the burnout happens. That's where the disconnection happens. That's where you're all out of alignment because wellness, like you said, it's not like just like going to multiple people, having multiple people to go to take care of your body. It's the same thing for us. Like it is not just one thing. It's thinking about all of these areas. So for me, what I do now is, and I also developed this tool called the check-in tool that's available on my website, where it helps you to really think about either if you're in something right now, but preferably if you're not in it and just like always being prepared, like preparing for the storm, like we're about to have a storm, we're supposed to. So everyone's like going to get like, what they need, gas, or you need like the bread. And so you have your stuff for whenever you're going through a storm. And to me, a storm is not always necessarily a bad thing. It could just be like a storm of like good things that are happening too. But really thinking about what do you need? So looking at those various wellness areas that I just mentioned and thinking about what currently exists. What is your reality related to those things? And then thinking about where do you want to be? Where do you want your physical body to be? Where do you want to be financially? Where do you want to be in terms of your relationships and so on? And then thinking about what do you need in order to get there? And a lot of those needs are going to come from yourself, but also they also come externally. And then really thinking about how are you in terms of the check-in tool, I have it where people are thinking about their identities first before they even go into that, because your identity oftentimes reflects how you show up in terms of filling your cup in various areas. So what I found, even being married to my husband is a Black man, a lot of the tension is like financial, how are we doing financial and career. But again, if you only focus on some, you're going to burn out. So, thinking about your identity and how that has influenced how you think about wellness in the various areas. And then, like I just talked about, how do you get from where you are to where you're going? And then the check in tool really thinks about what reflection questions can I ask myself, like about where did I see where I'm paying more attention to and less attention to? And what small steps can I take to get to where I want to get? So, it's to me, it's always thinking about maybe not every single day, but like, where am I pouring into across these 8 dimensions? But the core, to me, the core 4 are physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. You're not going anywhere if you don't have those. You're not going anywhere without them. And then people around you, your work is really gonna experience the lack thereof of that. So those are, I think, important. But I'm not saying like you just cut off the other 4, but those should really be sustaining to you in order to
Yeah.
fill the others.
I agree. I love the 8 dimensions of health.
Mm.
I'm always integrating them with clients
Yes.
because it is a way to show them how interconnected everything is. When one thing is off in one area, it does affect multiple areas in
Multiple.
your life.
Yeah.
And it is challenging sometimes to juggle all of the areas. However, it does take intention. Everyone is on a
Right.
different place in
Right.
their journey of healing and extending grace, not abandoning your boundaries, but
Right.
extending grace to
Amen.
others, is so beneficial to create sacred and safe spaces in
Mhm.
order for not only your growth and development, but the other person's growth and development as well. And so I have loved this conversation so, so much. I feel like we could just talk for hours about it because there's so many different places that we can jump. But what I would like to ask you as we start to close is what is one thing that you would like to leave our listeners with today? What is something on this alignment journey that you are guiding people on? What's one thing that you want them to take away today?
The one thing I think I want people to take away today is, I don't think I talked about it enough. I've talked about the spiritual aspect, but the power of prayer and the power of
Mm,
your words. So, which also would say the power of the words that are you're experiencing from others. There's but so much that I can do, right? Even in those 8 dimensions of wellness. And when it got really hard, sometimes it was just like, God, I need you. Like, and just something as simple as that, God will just fill it in. So I think when you don't know what to do, even if like, even just listening to this or any other things that are self help, if you don't know what to do, the first thing you could do is just act like, just ask God, I need your help. And I also use chat to put in what I'm going through right now. Can you create a prayer? And I will repeat that thing. Like, we have to remember that we are not only here as physical beings, we are very much spiritually in this world. And so the words that come out of your mouth, the words that, the thoughts that are in your mind are really powerful. And I think the power of prayer, the power of the words that you proclaim over yourself, affirmation is another, to me, prayer, all kind of in the same vein, is what can help you, like, it fills the gap, and it fills the gap in such a powerful way. It makes that connection point where you're like, I'm doing this, and God is like, I'm bringing it all together. So speaking over yourself, watching the words you say is really, really important.
I love that. And I feel like that just ties back into what we were discussing earlier and the importance of stillness. And so I love that. How can we connect with you?
Thank you. So yes, everything's on my website. So DanielleMarieSherman.com is where you can find me. But then also Danielle Marie Sherman on TikTok, on Instagram, and on LinkedIn as well, and on YouTube. So you can find me there. And the check-in tool is actually up there. So you can get access to it
It's ready.
already. It's ready. It's ready. I just know, especially for us women, it's time for us to build our capacity. Like, it's
Yes.
enough of, like, not having, struggling. It's enough of that. It's our time. Agree.
Before we close out, there's always one question that I love to ask our guests. With all of your lived experience, everything that you've been through, what would you tell little Danielle?
Ooh. Mm. And she's right here with me. You get to enjoy, you get to come on the ride, you get to rest now.
I want to thank you so much for being here today. This has been such an enriching conversation. I feel like it was so needed. And we had so many great gems and reminders for us to really tap in, to really be present, and to start the process of understanding that everything that we do is interconnected. And so, thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for all of the work that you are doing in the community.
Hey,
I'm so excited for what is to come for you in 2020. We will be along for the ride. I want to thank everyone for joining today, taking the time to watch this episode. We will see you in the next episode. Peace.
bye.